Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivise Sasanyavadi Paschatya Dasatarine. 1 minute. Krishna Govinda Hari Murari He Natanarayana Bhaja Vasudeva. So I'm going to read what's on the chart here. And then after this, we're going to say our first affirmation. What is it? Abhipushta? Is that a Hindi word? Abhipushta? Abhipushto? Pushtini? It's means affirmation in Hindi. I forgot the word. No? Nobody's heard it? Abhipushti. Something like that. Anyway. This slide is entitled, Our Material Condition Affects Our Spiritual Condition. A lack of self-care on the physical, emotional, and social level will negatively impact our spiritual lives because material problems and instability directly affect our spiritual stability. Premature transcendence, attempting to transcend or deny our human needs prematurely, will disrupt our progress on the path of bhakti. So I have a little mantra here. I am realistic about my needs and take care of them. So I just wanted to mention something which I think is more or less obvious, but it takes explanation. We had mentioned that anything you do that helps you spiritually is considered surrender. So you try to avoid anything which is not good for your spiritual life, and you try to do whatever is good for your spiritual life. So then you might think, well, I'm only worried about my spiritual life. I don't have to, it's got no relation to my material life. So spiritual self-care, devotee self-care would only mean like focus on service sadhana, but it's not true. So those who are married know that if they have problems in the marriage, it impacts in a negative way their Krishna consciousness. If you're not married, then something similar would be you're having some problem with another devotee, some conflict. And it could be about anything, but that conflict is having a negative impact on you. Sometimes it disturbs your japa, or just disturbs your life. And so some of you may have financial problems, and during japa, instead of praying to Krishna, please engage me in your service, you're praying like, I need a better job, I need money. Or obviously physically, if we have physical challenges, or emotional challenges, they can negatively impact, right? So if I do something to improve my relationships, improve my finances, maybe I have a job and I have to drive 2 hours to work and 2 hours back. So it's eating into my sadhana. I don't have enough time for sadhana. And therefore, self-care would be to try to find a job closer to home, right? Or a job where I don't have to work as many hours, right? So someone might think there's no connection, but when you start thinking about it, there's so much connection because everything is intertwined, right? So if I'm doing spiritual self-care, that might require that I change my job or move to another city or another house or whatever it is. So I think that's important. So are you ready for the first affirmation? Okay, I'm going to read it once, and then after I read it, we can read it together. Self-care is foundational to my spiritual advancement and empowers me to do my best and to be the best version of myself. So let's say together. Self-care is foundational to my spiritual advancement and empowers me to do my best and to be the best version of... Okay, give yourself a big hug. I love myself so much. That sounds so stupid, doesn't it? But if you don't love yourself, you could easily end up hating yourself. So better, sometimes people say, I had a teacher, he wasn't a devotee, but he taught me actually how to do seminars. And he would do affirmations, and he said, it sounds stupid, but it works. And he was doing affirmations to get rich. He said, I'd rather look stupid and be rich than not look stupid and be poor. So sometimes it looks stupid, but if it works, just do it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through these quickly. Let me just say, okay. When I began thinking about self-care, I think a lot of devotees were thinking that I would teach certain external activities of self-care, like balancing your life, rising early, setting aside time for sadhana. I mean, these are all good things, and it would be focused on external things you could do once you're self-caring. And so in creating the course, the most obvious thing to me was that I cannot help anyone be self-caring unless I work on the internal self-care. And to work on the internal self-care, what I mean is, if I suggest to you something would be good for you to do, but internally you don't care, then you're not going to do it, right? Even though you know what to do. So, in my personal life, I was dealing with an issue or a question that was coming to my mind. And we talked about it this morning. When I know what I should do, and I know it'll be good for me, and there's a little voice in my mind that says, I don't care. And I'm thinking, where did that voice come from, and how do I get rid of it? Because if I could just get rid of this voice and put in I do care, that would pretty much solve all my problems. I could be determined and controlled enough to do whatever I'd have to do, which would help me the most, be in my greatest self-interest. You know that voice I'm talking about? I don't care. You know that voice? Yeah. Prabhu, you should really be chanting your rounds at 5 a.m., not scrolling Instagram or whatever your favorite app is. Yeah, I know, but why don't you stop? I don't care. That, right? So that I don't care is it's destroying us. So then I thought, well, if I'm going to teach a course on self-care, it has to be focused on going from I don't care to I do care. Because if at the end of today you all care, then I don't have to tell you anything about what to do to take care of yourself. You will just do it. And your japa will get better, because if you care, you'll care about everything. You'll care too much. You will care. Wouldn't it be good if you care too much about yourself to allow yourself to do something that isn't good for you? Or you care too much about yourself to allow yourself to do something substandard. You could do it better. Have you ever chanted japa substandard? That's another yes answer. Yeah. It's most of the questions asked the answers are yes. So I'm giving you warning in advance. Have you ever chanted japa that is substandard? Second question. While you were chanting substandard japa, have you ever realized it was substandard? While you were chanting substandard japa and you realized it was substandard, did you ever do absolutely nothing? Why? Because you didn't care. And if you did care, would you have done something? Of course, right? So listen to this. This is really interesting. A devotee says, you know, I don't care much about my japa. You ever feel that way? I don't care enough about my japa. I should care more about my japa. Or I don't even care about it. I just chant it because I made a vow. You know that feeling? And I will tell you, I will say, no. That's not the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is you don't care enough about yourself to care enough about japa. The problem is deeper than I don't care. So anything you don't care about, I would suggest, don't say I don't care. I don't care about my health. I don't care about my sadhana. I don't care about my marriage. I don't care about my finances. I don't care about my school. I don't care about my career or whatever. I would say, no, don't say that. Say, I don't care, unless you're actually detached. That's another thing. But we're talking about things you actually should care about. So instead of saying, I don't care about my job, my health, my sadhana, my service, my psychological health, whatever it is, just say, I don't care enough about myself to care about blank. And that will make more sense. Because that's actually the problem. Because I can guarantee you, I can promise, if you cared more about, if you turned your care up to a higher number on the care chart, things would change. Your japa would get better. Check this out. I had this realization after teaching japa for maybe 5 classes. I said, sometimes my wife wants me to do something that I don't want to do, or it's not the right time to do it, or it's just like, it's like difficult. And some of those things that she wants me to do are relational. It's not just, can you do this, pick this up at the store. It's like acting a certain way. And sometimes I feel like it's maybe not so much my nature to act that way, or it's difficult. And I'd rather just say, do I have to, or it's not important, or whatever. But then often, if I do that, she feels like I'm just not putting energy into the relationship, or I should be more agreeable. And so after teaching self-care, I had an interesting realization. I thought, if I actually care about myself, I will care about this relationship, because if she's not happy, then I'm not happy. So then all of a sudden it became easier to make a sacrifice, because in making that sacrifice, I realized that I was caring for myself. So if you care for yourself, and you have a bad relationship, you should care for that relationship, because caring for that relationship then becomes caring for yourself. Isn't that interesting? You know, a lot of times in marriage, it's like you go so far, but you can't go any further. It's like, this is too difficult. It's too much. I can't do any more. And the marriage suffers, and then you suffer. Or if you're not married, a relationship, your bad relationship, you suffer. And you don't, you know, that person offended me, and I'm not going to, I just want them to apologize. And then they won't apologize because they didn't think they did anything wrong. And you just keep a bad relationship with that. It hurts you. So if you care about yourself, you would fix that relationship. Because once you fix the relationship, you'll be better off. Isn't that interesting? Wow. So I could say to someone who has a bad marriage, I could say, you don't care enough about yourself to have a good marriage, right? I teach a course on forgiveness. We did the course here, right? Years ago, we did a course. I wasn't teaching self-care, so I want to add this to the course. If I care more about myself, I will forgive. Why? Because if I don't, who suffers? I suffer, right? You remember what Suniti told Dhruva? When Dhruva was so angry at his father, because his father was controlled by Suruchi. And Suruchi, you could say, was envious of Dhruva because it wasn't her son. And she only wanted her son to be the favorite of the king, because the king, she was his favorite wife. And so, as you know the story, Uttama was Dhruva's brother, and Uttama was on the lap of Maharaj Uttanapada. And Suruchi was there, like, don't get on his... She was actually saying, if you read the Bhagavatam, she was telling him, you don't deserve to get on his lap. And he goes on his lap, and the father is controlled by it. And he pushes him off. And Dhruva's a Kshatriya, little Kshatriya boy. He's angry, super angry. And he comes running to his mother, crying. So she sees he's so upset. She asks what's happening. He explains it. And she tells him, if you are angry at another person, this anger will only hurt you. Right? So now my question to you is, do you think a self-caring person would hold on to anger? Do you think a self-caring person would hold on to revenge, resentment? No, because a self-caring person would realize immediately, this is toxic to me. This is damaging me. And so in the name of I need to be right or prove a point, I'm going to destroy myself. And once I developed the attitude of self-care, I wouldn't do that anymore, because it's actually stupid. Does that make sense? A lot of devotees ask me, they say, if somebody mistreats you, what do you do? And my answer is, generally, forget about it. I say, why would I want to think about it? Someone said that to you, it was nasty. Yeah, it was. It was nasty, inappropriate, unkind. Aren't you upset? Yeah, for a minute, but why would I want to be upset for more than a minute? Like, what's the point? So I can cause myself suffering? Do you remember the statement Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, nobody can harm you unless you harm yourself. What does that mean? That means you can harm me, but I don't have to allow myself to be harmed by what you did. It sounds, well, it sounds strange sometimes. You mistreat me and I don't have to be upset? You don't have to be. Isn't that amazing? Like, why? You want to be upset? And you'll say, no, I don't want to, but I am. I have to be. Well, with more self-care, you would think, this is not useful for anything. It's harmful. Therefore, let's just not think about this anymore. It's like, it just happened. It's unfortunate. Just let it go. It's not easy, is it? But when you develop self-care to a certain threshold, it'll be easy. Because at a certain threshold of self-care, you will find it impossible to do things which are harmful for yourself. And you can all say, wow, that's amazing. Wouldn't that be amazing? That you came to a point in your life where you could not do anything that's harmful for you because you care too much about your well-being. That would be fantastic, right? So we can't teach self-care unless we internalize it, because it won't work. I'll tell you, just forgive, let go, and you go, I can't. But you're damaging yourself. Yeah, I know, but I can't. But when you have self-care, I don't have to tell you you're damaging yourself, because you will not allow yourself to be damaged by that. So, no one can harm you unless you allow them to. Interesting, right? So, I like to allow people to harm me. I get upset when people are unkind. Okay, that's my choice, but I suffer. Do you care enough about yourself to prevent yourself from suffering? That's the question. What do you think? You believe me, or you think this is unbelievable? I can't believe this can happen. Well, maybe it seems difficult, but I will say that if you turn your self-care up strongly enough, if that voice of I don't care is weak and the voice of I do care is strong, you can do this. You can. Okay, now this might surprise some of you, but there are various methods of becoming free from addictions. We're talking like alcohol, drugs, or other gambling, deep addictions. There are different procedures, processes, and one of them is increasing self-love. Because an addiction means you give up everything in your life for one thing. Everything good in your life, you give it up for that addiction. And that addiction is destroying you. So doesn't it make sense that self-love would counteract an addiction? Isn't that interesting? They have a saying, addiction means you give up everything for one thing, and freedom from addiction means you give up one thing for everything. And addiction means you cannot stop doing something that's destroying you. So doing something that's self-destructive is obviously the opposite of self-care. That's why self-care, self-love, self-compassion can even cure an addiction. What to speak of a little thing, like you're eating too many sweets or you want to get up a half hour earlier. Addictions are almost impossible. So that's the power of self-care. If you care enough about yourself, you can switch so many things in your life. Oh, Prabhu, my rounds are bad. You ever said that before? Yes. Yeah. Only 3 people have bad rounds. Well, you have an amazing temple here. This temple should get an award. It must have been that japa workshop I did 10 years ago. Yeah. It's so powerful. It's still working, right? Prabhu, my rounds are bad. I don't know what to do. Well, how long have they been bad for? As long as I can remember. If I have self-love, could I allow myself to chant bad rounds every day? I could not do that to myself. Isn't that amazing? Like, I'm too self-caring to allow myself to do something to myself that's not going to be good and healthy for me. And after teaching japa for almost 20 years, I can't think of anything worse a devotee can do next to maybe offending a Vaishnava, but anything more paradoxical than chanting bad japa. It is like the epitome of the worst thing we can do. We reject Krishna. Krishna says, okay, you reject me, I reject you. But I'll come and speak Bhagavad Gita. You didn't even like Bhagavad Gita. Okay, forget it. But I still haven't given up on you. I'll come as Mahaprabhu, right? And as Prabhupada said, Krishna says surrender, then I'll give you the goods. Mahaprabhu says, you don't even have to surrender. I'll just give you the goods, right? And so now, second verse of Shishastakam, you've made yourself approachable, easily approachable, right? What does Shastra say? Unless you're qualified, you cannot approach Krishna. Unless you're second initiated, you can't go on the altar. Unless you're pure, you can't approach him. And Krishna says, okay, forget all that stuff. You've offended me. You've turned your back on me. Still, I am unapproachable, but I will allow you to approach me in my holy name. And then what do? Snick, snick, rom, rom. We offend Krishna, he forgives us, here's my holy name, and then we offend the holy name. Like, what could be worse than that? It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Okay, I'll save you. You have no qualification to associate with me. I will save you. I give you my holy name. And then you offend my holy name. Hare Krishna. I was just doing a japa workshop a couple weeks ago. And we were talking about, questions come up and then they create certain discussions. And, naturally in any kind of japa workshop, there's always the discussion about my mind wanders when I chant, right? So we were talking about it, and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, so we're personalists until we start chanting japa. And then we become impersonalists when we begin japa. Isn't it? Think about it, right? Krishna's a person until like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Krishna's everywhere. Krishna's on the altar and he's everywhere except one place, my mind and my heart and my ears, right? It's like I've become an impersonalist. The Hare Krishnas, we're famous as being impersonalists, yeah, and then we chant impersonal japa, right? So when you look at this paradox of how we're given the holy name and it's the thing that can save us, and then we don't chant it well. Oh Prabhu, my rounds are bad, I should write a book called Oh Prabhu, my rounds are bad. Subtitle, haven't chanted good rounds in, the last 3 yugas. Self-care, you have more self-care, you can't do that. You bring your self-care up high enough, you cannot allow yourself to do things which are bad for you. You can't do it. So you can't allow bad japa, you can't allow other people to hurt you. Even if they hurt you, you're just like, I'm not going to do this because this is going to hurt me. I can't be envious, I can't be resentful. It's all going to be harmful. I don't do it anymore. That's the power of self-care. Self-care. Isn't that amazing? Yes? What do you think? Can you relate to this? Does it make sense? You're chanting bad japa, you know it's bad japa, you're totally conscious of it, then you would think you would do something about it, right? You would think you would care enough. So those devotees who care enough about their spiritual life will do something. So you have to tell yourself, I need to care more about my spiritual life. And then if you do that, you feel that, you'll change automatically. And if you don't care enough, you'll just, my rounds are bad. Yeah, how long? The last 20 years. You doing anything? Oh, Prabhu, I just don't care. You don't care to go back to Godhead? I know I should care, but I don't. You want to do some math? You want to do some math? Okay. A day of Brahma, 12 hours, 4,320,000,000 years. So double that, 8,640,000,000, you get a day. That's a long time, right? 8 billion years. So Mahaprabhu comes once in a day of Brahma. And you know what Prabhupada said? He said, you should take advantage of this Krishna consciousness movement, because if you don't, you may have to wait another day of Brahma for Lord Chaitanya to come back and get his mercy. Do you care? Whatever. As long as I get Bakors and Kheer, I'm good. So that is, we are fighting in Kali Yuga. Prabhupada said, no sattva, practically no rajas, only tamas. That's tamas. That's classic tamasic thinking. Yeah, I know, but I don't care. That's tamagun working on us. Yes? Have you been there, done that? You understand it? So, I'm going to go back to make this point again. I don't care about my japa? No. You don't care about yourself, your spiritual life enough to care about your japa. Because if you cared about your spiritual life, you want to become a pure devotee in this life and go back to Godhead, automatically you have to care about your japa. There's no question, right? You have to care about your sadhana. Yes? Yes or yes? Yes. Pretty simple, right? So now, you're going to get to experiment with this in your life. We're going to try to turn up your self-care. We're going to try in the next, till 4:30, we're going to try to turn off the I don't care, the whatever. How do you say that in your language, whatever? What's the word? Jobi. Jobi? Jobi. We're going to try to turn off the Jobi and turn on the I care. How do you say I care? You don't even have the word. Oh my God. It's going to be a tough crowd here. It's like trying to preach about God in China. They don't even, have the word for God, I think, in their language, right? Is there a word for God in Chinese? Chinese language has the word God, or no? In China, you're trying to preach about God in Chinese. They don't even have the word. Yeah. Anyway. So I want to. Yeah. So here is the chart. Here is the chart, and I want you to look at this chart, and I want you to see where do you think you're at on the scale. And if you care about yourself sometimes and sometimes you don't, then you can just say, I'm at 10. And if you've given up the not caring, you're at 12 or higher. And this is just for you. You don't have to tell anybody. Number 12 is where self-care is unadulterated by any kind of negativity, self-negativity. And so I put a light on number 12 because I think that's minimal. We need to be at 12 to make some significant changes in our life. Do you ever allow anybody to harm you and upset you, and you don't say anything, and then 3 weeks later an atomic bomb comes out of your mouth? Did that ever happen to you? That means you're at 7. You're at 7, but you're trying to be artificially tolerant. But you're not being artificially tolerant, you're not being self-caring. Someone's abusing you and you don't say anything. Okay, if you're Takahari dust, yeah. We'll wait till you're Takahari dust. But until you're Takahari dust, and it's fine if you want to tolerate something if it's not disturbing you and not creating anger within you and so forth. But when you tolerate something and it's bothering you and you can't tolerate it and it's creating this very rajasic, tamasic reaction, that means you're not looking out for yourself, because then you would approach the person and say, this behavior is not acceptable, it's harming me. That's self-care. Does that make sense? Or that is it can be done with Vaishnava etiquette, it can be done politely, but it can be done. If it is going to, have you ever seen a devotee tolerate so much that they leave ISKCON? Have you ever seen that? Yeah. So self-care would be, he would talk to the person who's abusing them and saying, this is not helping me, and maybe you think it's helping me, but it's not. And therefore he would protect himself from being abused, and he would still be a devotee, right? So I think sometimes we mix up a lack of self-care with maybe being Krishna conscious when it's not. And you can only really understand it's not Krishna conscious when it's not having a Krishna conscious result. So I'm tolerating, and inside I'm burning up. That's not tolerance. You're not really tolerating. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Anyway, like I said, this takes time to digest. People have taken this course many times, and every time they're saying, I'm learning more every time. It's just going deeper. It's something you have to experience in your life, and you have to practice. And a lot of times what you can start doing now is just in your daily life, when you're making decisions, ask yourself, if I have more self-care, would I make the same decision? Because maybe you're making decisions in your life but they're not really good for you, but you just keep making them. And with more self-care, you'll ask yourself, should I, is this the right thing to do? Should I do something else? It could be very simple things. I've been neglecting dealing with something. Is that a self-caring attitude? I've been putting this on hold. Is that a self-caring? So if I had more self-care, would I take something from the back burner to the front burner? Maybe the answer is yeah, I would. Maybe the answer is no. But at least you asked the question. And you'll be surprised when you start asking that question how many little things in your life will change. And a lot of little things change. It comes out to something much different, right? I'll chant later. Ever done that one before? Raise your hand if you've never done that before. Okay. That's if you've never done it. Yeah. We've all done it, okay? I'll chant later. Yeah, later never comes. My new book. I'll chant later, subtitled, Later Never Comes. I need to live like 400 years to write all these books. Anyway, so you're like, I don't want to do it. And then you ask yourself, if I had more self-care, what would I do? And you just get up and start chanting. You said, that's what I would do. So it can be that simple. Just ask that question, what would I do? Your husband or wife says something to you and Lord Shiva is incarnating in your mind right now and you're about to destroy someone or something or destroy anyone who walks in front of you. And you think, if I have more self-care. You know what Prabhupada said about that? Do you know what he said? No, similar. Devotee says, Prabhupada, I'm too weak to follow principles. And Prabhupada says, why are you giving in to weakness? When you think, as long as you say, I'm too weak, then, Krishna goes, okay. All right, no problem. I'm too weak to follow principles. Okay, no problem. As long as you're too weak, no problem. Why are you giving in to weakness? That was Prabhupada's response. So have you ever said that? I'm too weak to blank. And you think, well, I said it, therefore I'm okay, everything's good. It's just a reality, I'm too weak, and, just the way it's going to be. Why would you do that if you actually care about yourself? You wouldn't. When you realize I'm weak, you would say, I'm weak, too weak to do this, I have to do something. That's self-care says, I have to do something. Lack of self-care says, whatever, it's just the way I am. I can't do anything. Does that make sense? Self-care says, okay, we have a problem. Let's look at it and do something. Lack of self-care says, it's just the way I am and I can't change. Which is another way of saying, I am completely in the mode of ignorance. And I like it down there, because I don't have to do anything. You know the example, the devotees did a play. They had the 3 modes of nature, and they acted out each mode. And the mode of ignorance, the devotees were drunk and intoxicated, and they're like, hey, you want to go do this? And they're like, yeah, but it's too much trouble. That's the mode of, yeah, whatever, let's just stay here. That's the mode of ignorance. So when I say, I can't do this, what are we really saying? We're saying it's too much trouble to try to improve, aren't we? That's the mode of ignorance. So whatever is mode of ignorance. Jobi is mode of ignorance. That's what it is. And the mode of ignorance, it's easy to be in the mode of ignorance because you don't have to do anything. And you can kind of just rationalize all your problems away and just, this is just how I am. But Prabhupada would say, why are you staying like that if that's not good for you? So if you ever say, this is how I am, then self-care will say, why are you staying that way? It's not good for you. Right? So let's read this affirmation again. It'll make more sense. Let's read it together. And when you read it, say it like you mean it. Try to feel it. Say it like this is how you live. This is what you believe. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
I care for, accept, love, and show compassion to myself because I value myself and my Krishna consciousness. I replenish myself as needed. Hare Krishna. Okay, so now, we started about, so maybe in a half hour we'll take a break. Some of you may be thinking, this all sounds good, Prabhuji, but where in the Shastra? This sounds good, Prabhuji, but it's not in Prabhupada's books. You made this all up. All right. To prove myself innocent, we are on section 3. What did Prabhupada say? Are you ready? Yes. So we're going to read these quotes. First of all, save yourself, then try to save others. Or both things can go on simultaneously. The same example, if you want to save somebody who's drowning, you must know that I may not be washed away. I have to remain strong, then I can save him. Srila Prabhupada Conversation, February 14th, 1977, Mayapur. Okay, like the example we gave. How are you going to save anybody if you can't save yourself? Now, I have a little, maybe it's a realization I want to share with you. I believe that sometimes we try to save others more than ourselves because it's easier. Because if I tell you to chant good japa, I don't have to. And it's way easier to tell you to chant good japa than to actually do it, right? So I would be suspicious of anyone who tells me to do anything that they don't do, because then their preaching is just like, it's almost like they're deceiving themselves, thinking like I can tell others to do something and I'm off the hook because I told them to do it, right? So last night I was telling devotees that if you were Prabhupada's disciple in India in 1965, he sent you to America and he said, I'm too old, I can't go. But he gave you the printout of, so Prabhupada was 12, I figure 30, let's say 3,000 lectures Prabhupada gave, at least 3,000. So Prabhupada recorded all those lectures, transcribed them, and gave them to you and said, here are 3,600 lectures, this will get you through the next 10 years. I want you to go spread Krishna consciousness. So all you're doing is memorizing Prabhupada's lectures and giving them. And my question was, would you have been as successful as Prabhupada? To which everyone answers, no. Why? Because our own purity affects other people, right? So now, if you're trying to help another person and your purity level is high, that's going to make it much easier for them. Yes? Yes. And if your purity level is low, so we think, no, I don't want to be selfish. I don't like this self-care stuff. It's so selfish. Okay, Prabhu, you don't want to be selfish, so stop chanting japa, because that's so selfish. You're just sitting in the temple, alone, chanting. You could be out saving the world, and you're just chanting Hare Krishna. That is so selfish. Stop going to Mangalartik. It's all for you. It's all about you and your spiritual life. You're selfish. And your time, all that time reading Bhagavatam, you're so selfish. You could be feeding people, helping the poor. You're so selfish. Actually, sadhana is just selfish. You like that argument? It makes sense? Yeah, it's true. Spiritually selfish. I am spiritually selfish because if I'm not, I will not be able to help anybody, right? So we are teaching spiritual selfishness because by being spiritually selfish, I can actually help people more than by not being spiritually selfish because I have Shakti, right? So What did Prabhupada say here? Save yourself first. Turn to the devotee next to you and tell him, save yourself first. Does it make sense? Yeah. I have a mission. I have a mission in life. My mission is to speak the most profound truth I can discover in the simplest possible way that even kids could understand. Because I find the most profound truths are super simple. And in fact, they're so simple, we overlook them. Isn't it? So like I'm really on a mission to specialize in speaking simple things that we overlook and showing how those simple things are so meaningful. So here's another statement by Prabhupada. But as devotees of Krishna, being engaged in the practical work of spreading Krishna consciousness, that is already the highest realization. That's all right. That is our real mission, to deliver the world by preaching Krishna's message to others. But even higher realization, the highest realization, is to save oneself. Turn to the devotee next to you and tell them, the highest realization is to save oneself. Wow. So now, people are going to say, well, what did Mahatma Prabhu teach you? He taught us how to be really selfish. That was the essence of the workshop, be selfish. Now, you want to hear the backstory to this letter? Would you like to hear it? It's like, I can tell you the backstory because I was there. You are so lucky. I mean, I'm so lucky that I was there, and you're lucky that you're here, so I can tell you. So this devotee, he was engaged in massively spreading Krishna consciousness, especially through book distribution. And he worked so hard, and he was so intelligent. And Prabhupada depended on him so much. But he had a tendency to neglect his sadhana. And his mood was, we should save the fallen conditioned souls. Now that's the highest thing, and we should sacrifice everything to save the fallen conditioned souls. Have you ever heard a lecture like that? We should sacrifice our lives to spread Krishna consciousness. So that, everybody starts sleeping 4 hours, eating 1 chapati a day, And 3 weeks later, you're all in the hospital, So, this devotee was really good at neglecting himself. And Prabhupada is writing this letter to him. There's no accident. He's writing this letter to him. Isn't that interesting? Hare Krishna. This is our self-care shloka from Bhagavad Gita, Yukta Hara Viharasya, Yukta Chetasya Karmashu, Yukta Svapanubodasya, Yoga Bhavati Dukkha. So Krishna's suggesting here, balance your life. That's self-care. I mean, every verse in Bhagavad Gita will help you, but this is, if you want a self-care verse, this is a self-care verse. Okay, I'm going to skip a few things. And so here's our affirmation. I save myself first. Let's repeat. I save myself. Turn to the devotee next to you and tell them with enthusiasm, I save myself first. And if you don't have a devotee next to you, find one and move over so you can tell them whenever we ask you to tell them something. You can tell the devotee instead of the space, the sky. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, have you ever heard this word self-envy used by Prabhupada before? Any of you? Self-envy, like Krishna says he's envious of himself. Shastra uses words such as self-envy, spiritual suicide, and killer of the soul to describe any thought or action that moves us further away from Krishna consciousness. Such actions are thus considered spiritually suicidal, since we are the ones killing our opportunity to become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead. So I have a little quote here. I am committing spiritual suicide when I don't take advantage of Krishna consciousness. So we're going to read some letters in a minute that describe this, but I have to explain one thing, which is very confusing. Isn't this word self-envy a confusing word? Because envy means you want something that another person has. More specifically, you want what they have and you don't want them to have it. Like jealousy is like, I want what you have. And envy is more like, I want what you have and I don't want you to have it. So like, why would you be envious of yourself? Because how could you want what you have because you already have it? And why would you not want to have what you have? It doesn't make sense. And whenever I give this workshop, devotees are like, self-envy, what does that mean? And then I explain it and they still ask, what does it mean? So I'm giving you a forewarning here. I'm explaining what it means now, because if I just explain it without this context, you might miss it. But this word, it's going to come up again and again and again. And every time it comes up, you're going to think, self-envy, that doesn't make sense. So can I explain it to you now? All it means is self-hatred. So anytime you see Prabhupada use the word self-envy, it means self-hatred. Envy is often used as a synonym for hatred. Prabhupada said we should not be envious of the cows. Are any of you envious of cows? Like any of you want to be a cow? Nobody. So then what does Prabhupada mean you're envious of a cow? He means you're committing violence. It's hatred. You hate the cow. You're eating the cow. You actually hate the cow. So again, when we see the word self-envy, we translated that as self-hatred, which means, so what does self-hatred mean? It means doing anything which is detrimental for yourself. Can you hate yourself? Yes, you can. Can you love yourself? Yes, you can. When you're not loving yourself, it's likely you're hating yourself or doing something negative towards yourself. We say the mind is the friend or the enemy. So if the mind becomes our enemy, we're making choices which go against ourselves. So we're actually acting out of self-hatred. Even though it may not consciously feel like self-hatred, Prabhupada says it is. And what does Prabhupada mean? Prabhupada means you can go back to Godhead in this lifetime, and if you don't take advantage of it, then what is it? It's spiritual suicide. That's all it is. It's spiritual suicide. Prabhupada said, if you come to Krishna consciousness and you don't take advantage of it, then you are the most unfortunate person in the world. More unfortunate than those who don't know about it. Wow, that's scary. What did Prabhupada mean? He means you're exhibiting more self-hatred than somebody else because they're in ignorance. They don't consciously know they're doing the wrong thing. You do the wrong thing, you're consciously knowing you're doing the wrong thing. That is violence to yourself. Hare Krishna. What do you think? Okay. I'm going to skip a few. Yeah, so here. This is a nice one. Explains what I just explained. So you voluntarily accept this cycle of birth. Don't accept Krishna. Then who can help you? If you have decided to cut your own throat, how can I help you? You'll do it. Whenever you'll get an opportunity, you'll cut your throat. How much I can give you protection. I just realized this man is hanging himself. He's not cutting his throat. I have to get a new picture. But spiritual suicide, same idea, right? So here's a little mantra on the bottom. Even my guru cannot help me if I am determined to avoid Krishna consciousness myself. Okay. So, let's see if there's anything else I want to say. Prabhupada is asked, what is the devotee's greatest enemy? And his answer, he himself, because he's a rascal. He's his greatest enemy. So just out of this Get out of this rascaldom and you become your friend. Nobody's enemy. You are yourself your enemy. So, a little mantra, I can either be my greatest friend or worst enemy. So turn to the devotee next to you and get very heavy with them and tell them, you are your greatest enemy. So, yeah. So we have an affirmation. I trust and respect myself by living in integrity with my values and thus act as my best friend. Say it together. By living in integrity with my values. So, my dear devotees, we can act as our best friend or as our worst enemy, as we know. And I will make the proposition that if we lack self-care, we will tend to act as our enemy more often than we need to. And we act with self-care, we will, and we perfect our self-care, we will never be our enemy again. We'll only be our friend. Wouldn't that be good? That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Okay, we have an exercise for you. Can you get a partner and answer these questions with your partner? Just a few questions to answer. Some examples of how you're envious of yourself and how you're out of integrity and how you could be more self-loving, okay? So find a partner. Partner means two people. And tell your partner your answers to these questions, okay? And your partner may be sitting next to you or sitting in the back of the room. You can choose. But everyone should have a partner. And in order to do this exercise, one thing is required. We have to be awake. So on the count of 3, everyone wake up. Ek, do, tin, jiv, jago. Okay, so find your partner. All you have to do is answer these questions.
I want to
seeing
speak
you.
to you. Yeah, I want to see you a little after 5 o'clock. You're here, and you're going somewhere immediately.
4:30 we
Okay. There are two things I want to talk to you about.
yes.
One is there is in England, they had a law called the law of thoughts, T-O-R-T-S, thoughts, T-O-R-T-S, that means doing violence. Any kind of, it's a big topic in law of thoughts. You know this word, no, thought, T-O-R-T-S.
Yeah, but I don't know what
This
it
thought, untaught, so many, so many
means. Right.
wrong things people can do in life. Like it's like aparat. Thought is like an aparat. That's one thing. So what you're talking about is self-torture. That is, I'm doing torture to myself, no self-torture.
Yeah, all the time.
If you are not Krishna conscious, what you are doing is self-torture.
Definitely.
Right? Why would I do that? Ignorance, you can say, 3 modes, you can say, so many things. The counter is you chant nicely. Then you wake up. Then you appreciate your life, that you are part of Krishna, that Krishna's beautiful creation is there. But you start chanting apara, namapara. Hopefully you do namabas. But why is that a child cannot do chant without apara? But the child also has previous samskar, it cannot chant without apara. But we say Ajamil chanted without apara.
Simple answer.
Why cannot child do?
Again, anyone who doesn't know the opera.
But we start with namapara, right?
No, Bhaktivinoda says, Thakur says we start now. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says we start with Namabas.
Okay, same thing, but not pure way.
We start Namabas,
But not Suddhana.
and then we make offense.
Huh?
We start Namabas, and then when we make
Yeah, but
offense,
why no one in the world can start with Suddhana?
because we're not pure.
But that's a handicap, no? I'm starting with a handicap.
The holy name is more powerful than your handicap.
And another thing is in economics, there's something called law of diminishing returns. The more you eat, the less you feel like eating. It's the same with the holy name.
If you're chanting aparad, yeah? Only aparad, not pure nam.
Okay, I hear some pure devotee chant holy name. Now why can't pick up and run?
Because we're not pure.
I'm purified by hearing the
We're not hearing.
I'm purified by hearing a holy person chanting the holy name. I'm purified.
Yeah.
I'm purified.
Not that.
I want to run now with that. I heard Prabhupada chant.
You
I want to run with it.
have wax in your ear, so you didn't hear it loudly. You have Maya wax. I have to stop. Okay. Anyone need more time? Or you have such a long list of operads, you need the rest of the day. Okay. If you want to go longer, that's fine. We're going to take a break for 10 minutes, so you can stand up and use the toilet if you need and get water. There's whatever you need. And we'll meet back here at 12:10. If you want to continue your discussion, just keep going. You have many things to say. You can keep talking. All right? Good? Okay, thank you. Where's the toilet I can use? Go out this way, sir? Is there one? That way or this way?
We can go to the prasad and
That's the
that
closest.
is otherwise not.
Who's your partner? Who's your partner? Brahmacharya partner?
We can go to base from
Udah pergi, udah putar.
तो बेंगलुरु महाराष्ट्र से आए हैं तो अभी हमको बोले कि स्टार्ट कर दे रिकॉर्डिंग क्या कर रहा आपका ये है ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ and devotees catch what is common अभी आप बताइए क्या है चला गया ನಾವು ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ಗೆ ರನ್ನೇ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ಗೆ ರಿಫ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ತಗೋಬೇಕು ಆಮೇಲೆ class is starting.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. So now what we're going to do is we're going to ask you, if any of you would like to share any of your realizations from doing this last exercise, and or we'll take any questions related to anything we've discussed so far. So just raise your hand and the microphone will come. We'd like to hear from you. Don't be embarrassed to reveal how you're an enemy to yourself, because we're all enemies to ourselves. And what one of you reveals is probably going to reveal what we all feel. But I'd like to have some discussion about this. I think it would be healthy. So who would like to be the first brave one to share? Yes?
I have a question.
Okay.
Maybe somebody knows the answer. Or you can explain more about this. Now, when every time the mind is speaking, we hear those two voices. So I want to understand who is speaking, whether the mind is speaking or is it, the Paramatma is speaking. Who is speaking? Whether the soul is speaking. How do we decide?
It's usually, we could say Paramatma is speaking if it's Krishna conscious. Or you could say the soul is speaking if it's Krishna conscious, but really it's the conditioned self. When we become our enemy, it's that programming. Because all those samskars we've programmed in were samskars that we programmed in for material activity. So it's just the habits and the beliefs. Every thought has as its root a belief. So if you trace all those negative thoughts, what's the belief? I'm enjoyer, I'm the controller, I can be happy. So that's been so deeply programmed. So the thoughts are just byproducts of that. But it's like we're so deeply conditioned that after we become devotees, the mind is still thinking like it used to think. And so sometimes you understand something with your intelligence, but the conditioning, the habit, is to do it a different way. And so we're really, you could speak of it in terms of the modes of nature. It is the effects of the modes of nature in connection with the senses and mind. But I just understand it and see it as subconscious, chitta, and samskaras. And that's why we say, Prabhupada said, don't listen to your mind. I mean, if it's Krishna conscious, of course, you want to listen. But otherwise, what's the point of listening? It's just bringing up old stuff that you programmed in there that has no value for you now. But it doesn't die down easily. It's got a lot of momentum. So the process of Krishna consciousness is, how can I go on steadily in spite of the fact that my mind is trying to misdirect me? And so I can say, okay, one way is to just disengage from the mind, try to ignore it. Another is to advance in Krishna consciousness, hear and chant, purify my intelligence so my intelligence overrides my mind. But even when the intelligence overrides the mind, it doesn't mean that the mind's not bringing up all kinds of crazy things. It just means the intelligence is saying, yeah, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this. So, my own experience is a lot depends on your determination. Because for a devotee who's determined, nothing's going to stop them, no matter how bad it is. And they will look at it's like that verse in the 11th canto, and the devotee is praying, he's saying, I have all these desires, I don't want them, but they're there. It's just like, and he's saying, it's like, I don't even know what I can do about it. Because I'm just following the process, and they come up. But I'm not going to give in to them. So it's a little bit like that's part of the process of sadhana. It's like, I'm trying to go somewhere, but I'm going through a jungle where there's all kinds of trouble. And all this trouble was created in past lives. And I somehow have to just tolerate it and just go through it. It's going to be a difficult road. And I think with exercises and discussions like we're having now, we can work more carefully so that on these fundamental levels where we're working against ourselves, we start working for ourselves more for ourselves, so that we start generating more thoughts which are helpful. And we get better at dealing with those negative thoughts. Just like they're there, but it's like, but you have thoughts which are not helpful for you. If you lack self-care, you can get really discouraged. And even maybe get so discouraged you just give in to them because you think, what's the use? I've tried to get rid of them, they're still there. Where a more self-caring attitude is like, yes, I'm a conditioned soul, these thoughts will be there, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it. It's just, this is who I am now. Oh, maybe I could have been a sadhu, a sannyasi, but I'm not. This is just who I am. But I'm not going to beat myself up because of it. But at the same time, I'm not going to give into it. And it's just something I have to deal with. It's like a physical condition. Maybe you're predisposed to a physical condition, and so your whole life you have this condition, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you can do a little bit, but let's say the condition's going to stay there, so you just adapt your life to deal with it. And you adjust to it. So it's like this condition of the mind is like, it's going to bring up things that we don't want. Then we're just going to keep going on in Krishna consciousness. But I think also that it's really important, like I was saying earlier, it's really important to meditate on what are your goals? Who is it? What kind of devotee do you want to be? What are the qualities you want to manifest? And really, really have that as your goal. Because if you don't have that, when the mind comes up, then what are you going to counter it with? It's like, no, I don't want this thought. This is not part of my intention in life. So I want to go this direction. So that's very helpful. So the mind's shooting up so many things, but you're always very clear about where you want to go, what you want to do. And so a lot of times I think my goals are so clear, and I think, why would I do anything other than that? Because if I do, I'll just suffer. And even though the mind's saying, yeah, don't do that, it's difficult, do this, it's easy. I have to think, yeah, but if I do it, what's going to happen? And another thought also is employing your intelligence, strengthening the intelligence. So one way you strengthen intelligence is to look at the ramifications of, if I did this, what would happen? Like that negative thing. And you just take it forward. Say, if I did that, it would be very bad for me, or even destructive. So even though the attachment is strong, the desire is strong, if I think, if I did it, okay, I get 1 day of pleasure, 5 minutes of pleasure, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, and then what? The rest of my life, I suffer. So that way the intelligence can kind of override the mind. And say, okay, this desire, but there's another thing we have a problem with, is that when the desire is there, it's like we don't make a distinction between the desire and ourself. We think that's who I am. Like whatever you desire becomes your identity. I want this, I need this, I have to have this. But if it's not your identity, if you disassociate with it as your identity, you just say, it's a conditioned desire, and you kind of separate from it. And then it's easier to deal with. You can just like look at it and go, oh yeah, this is an old desire, and look at it. But when we identify with it, and this is who I am, then it's like, now how are you going to overcome something that becomes your identity? Having this is who I am. I live to have this. So you kind of have to, reason with your mind, talk to it, neglect it, alter beliefs, make intentions that you want. And then the other thing that's happening is that a lot of us, we give in too easily to the mind. It's like there's a thought that says, I want this, right? And then you actually think you want it, but not necessarily. It's not what you want. It's just what the mind said you want. So that kind of separation from myself and the thought is very helpful. It's just a thought, it's like, have you ever wanted something that you don't want? It's like, we're doing a retreat in Govardhan. Well, I would invite you, but it's full. There's no more room. Unless you want to live in a room with 100 other men, you're welcome to come, or women. We have room for single men in the big hall, but other than that, the other rooms. But that's going to be a question. Have you ever done, do you ever desire things that you don't want to do? Yes? Do you ever desire things that you know you're never going to do, but you still think about doing them? Yes? So the mind is crazy. So you have to be able to look at that and you're looking at the mind and going, you're stupid, I'm not going to do this, just shut up. It's that conditioning is just coming to bother us. And until we're more purified, the conditioning overrides our desire. So, but my ultimate answer is I believe self-care is a higher solution, because through self-care, I can just say, I'm not going to do that. If I do this, I will be harming myself, and I care too much about myself. I'm not going to do this. Let's say you're married, and at the office there's this girl you're falling in love with, and you like her so much, and you think, she's so much better than my wife. She's so much nicer than my wife. She doesn't criticize me. She doesn't, make so many demands and like that. And you're like totally out of control. If you have self-care, you'll think, I could never do that. That would destroy our family, it would destroy me, it would destroy everything. I can't do that to myself. So the mind can come up with anything, but your self-care says, but I can't do that to myself. It's destructive. So you don't worry so much about what comes up in the mind, because you understand it's just all programmed in there from other lives. But you worry more about this life and staying true to your values. Another thing which is really interesting, a lot of times we give in to desire because our values aren't strong enough. Because ultimately, people who have values will stick to their values no matter what they feel. So okay, we'll use this example. So this woman in the office, it's like everything you ever could dream of. And your wife is everything you had nightmares of. So you're really in a difficult situation, right? So, but you have a value, a family value, the value of responsibility. Be a responsible husband and wife, a responsible father, an example to the community. And you've had this, and you were programmed since you were 5 years old that you only get married once, you only have one wife, and you stick to it no matter if it's good or not. And that value is so deeply ingrained in you that no matter how you feel, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter how you feel, because your value overrides your feeling. But if your values are weak, your feeling overrides your value, right? So if you want to override your mind, strengthen your values to the point where there's no question you would ever, there's no question. There's certain things we would never do as devotees. It doesn't matter. If someone had a knife to our throat and said, you do this, and say, no, I won't. It doesn't matter. So if you can strengthen your values, then it doesn't matter what your mind says. It's conditioned self, because you're not going to budge. And I see self-care and connecting to our values as really the same thing. because the values are what we want to be, and the values are the ways we want to act. And if we don't act that way, we suffer. And so we're working against ourselves. We're becoming an enemy if we don't live our values. So whatever your values are, try to strengthen them. Like, if you can strengthen a value, like good japa as a value, that's a value for me, to chant good japa. It's such a strong value, I find it impossible to chant bad japa. Wouldn't that be good? Yes? Or, rising early, or whatever it is, studying Prabhupada's books. You can see in certain devotees, they're very strict about certain things in their lives. That's because their values are so strong. Nothing can budge them. You can't budge them. There's no situation that moves them from that, because the value is too deep, right? So it's interesting, right? Because we normally think we act based on how we feel, which is generally true. But if your feelings are contradictory to your values, you won't act that way if your values are strong. So then you don't have to worry about your mind. It's just like, it's irrelevant. It's like, whatever, mind says this, like whatever, I don't do that. You can tell me that the rest of your life. You can go, hey, look at this, go do this, get that. It doesn't matter, I'm not going to do it. And then, after a while, you start to realize, well, I'm not going to do that. My mind says, do something that I know I'll never do. So after a while, if you think, if I'm never going to do it, if it's my value not to do it, why am I thinking about it? And you're just like, this is stupid. Why am I bringing this up? So that's the importance of values. But I want to reiterate again that the greatest we talk about happiness, like how to be happy. It's a big discussion, so many books on it. But I don't know how to be happy if you don't live according to your values. And I don't know how to be unhappy if you live according to your values. So, if you want a happiness hack, that would be my advice. Just as a general hack for happiness, you're living in integrity with your highest values. Jagannath Swami ki jai, Radhe ki jai. Radhe Shyam. Yeah. I was listening to a class, and in the class it said, association of devotees will allow you to experience real happiness. And then the devotees were discussing it, and the devotee said, oh, now I got the happiness hack. The happiness hack, to associate with devotees. And I thought, well, that's a cool word, the happiness hack, So this is another, associate with devotees. But this is such an important happiness hack, to be living in integrity with what is in your heart. Because if you don't do that, you suffer. And the mind, the mind is the enemy. You know that verse in Bhagavatam, I think it's, God, I don't know if it's in the 11th canto or not. I think it's the Avanti Brahman. And he's saying, some people say misery is caused by this, misery is caused by that, misery this. It's your karma, it's your samskar. He goes on the whole list of things people could say that could cause you misery. He said it's the mind. That's the only cause of misery, is the mind. And so if you want to unravel that, then I would say the mind, when it goes against our integrity, is the cause of the greatest misery. And the mind, when it supports our integrity, is the cause of the greatest satisfaction and happiness. Because I don't know how you can be happy and satisfied if you're going against the very things you believe to be most dear to you and most important. And when you become a devotee, you get so many values, right? You learn so many things you didn't grow up with. And so it's hard to ignore them because they're ingrained within us all the time, isn't it? These are our values, and whether you live them or not, they're there, and if you don't live them, you suffer. It could be subconscious, it could be very subtle. And one sign of this suffering is we become materially attached to sense gratification, because we're trying to be happy by gratifying our senses, getting ahead materially, whatever, right? So because something is missing and we're trying to replace it. And by Krishna's mercy, He's created this world in a way we can't be happy without Him. Without following his instructions, we can't be happy. We suffer, and that's his mercy. We feel it on an emotional level, isn't it? Emotional pain is greater than physical pain in many ways. And another thing which is really beautiful, if you're in a situation where you're tempted, where your mind is tempting you, and you don't give in to that temptation, how do you feel? Like we say in America, I feel like $1 million. Do you have that saying here? I feel like 1 crore of rupees. You know that feeling? You know that feeling? When you could do something wrong and you turn your back on it and you make the right decision? How good do you feel? Feel like, hey, I just conquered the universe. Isn't it? So, really, in a sense, you could say for a self-caring devotee, the mind's not even an issue. It doesn't matter. It's just like whatever. The mind can do whatever. It doesn't matter. I have my values, and I would not act against my values because I don't want to cause myself suffering. I want to support myself. That's what self-care means. It's not. You're not going to get it in a day, but that's what it means. So you can work forward towards that. And then again, you ask yourself this question every time you're making a decision. Is this self-caring? Or if I were more self-caring, would I make this decision? Really a good question. If I were more self-caring, would I make the same decision? Or if I were more self-caring, what decision would I make? And you can add to that, if I cared more about my Krishna consciousness, what decision would I make? Because that's really self-care, the highest level. Hare Krishna. Is that all right? I mean, that was a mouthful. But I wouldn't. We have a saying in America, if you want to ignore somebody, you say, I wouldn't give that person the time of day. Like I wouldn't give them 1 second of I wouldn't give my mind the time of day. I would, why should I give my mind any energy? It's like, it's just, unless it's taking me towards Krishna, what's the point? And another thing is, you can use the mind in so many ways to hear and chant about Krishna and relish Krishna consciousness. Just occupy your mind. Here's my meditation. And I think I've thought this way my whole life as a devotee. What Prabhupada has given us is so rare. It's so special. It's so valuable. And it's so relishable. How could I be so stupid not to take full advantage of it? How could I be so stupid to allow my stupid mind to pull me away from that? What greater misfortune could I cause upon myself to give into my mind and lose the opportunity to become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead in this lifetime? And that thought has always helped me. It just keeps me going, because I always think to not take advantage of this and not do my best is the absolute stupidest thing I could do, for sure, 108%. So I could be very successful materially and take another birth. How stupid is that? Like, I haven't been successful materially before in the last 10 zillion lifetimes? I'm sure I have. I want to do 10 zillion in one now? Do it again? How stupid is that? Maybe this lifetime I can get a bigger house than I ever had. Congratulations. And you can take birth again and do the same stupid thing again. So I feel like thinking that way is how Prabhupada wanted us to think, and that really helps. Like, I've got the gold right now. What am I going to do? Throw it down the toilet? So when you think that way, it's easier to control the mind, because all the mind is doing is trying to ruin you. Right? So why would I let the mind ruin me? That's stupid. Yes? You know, when devotees say to me, they say, how can I be more Krishna conscious? Often, I just say one thing, don't be stupid. And what I mean by that how could you not be Krishna conscious? How could you be so stupid as to not take advantage of it, right? And the fact is, to be Krishna conscious, you have to be somewhat intelligent. And you don't have to be that intelligent, you just have to allow Prabhupada's intelligence to program your intelligence, and then you'll be fine. So you have to be open to get programmed, and so your intelligence now is Prabhupada's intelligence. And if you have Prabhupada's intelligence guiding you, it's going to be quite easy. And you're not going to give into your mind, because Prabhupada wouldn't, right? He wouldn't let you give into that. And so if you think about it, Prabhupada has given us so much intelligence, there's absolutely no reason to give into Maya. We don't have one good reason to give into Maya, because Prabhupada has guided us away from Maya. He's taught us how she comes, how she attacks, and how to defeat her. So there's no reason we have to be in Maya. Right? Yes? Yes. Yeah. So there's no reason for me to be in Maya, so if I am, I must be stupid. So I can tell myself, stop being stupid. Stop being stupid, stupid. And when you're intelligent, you're so happy. You see the world the way Prabhupada sees it. You're happy. Okay. Someone else want to share or have a question? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. I have a question. Like the slides, I got to know that self-care is what we should do something about it, and lack of self-care says it's the way it is, and we have to accept it.
Lack of self-care says?
It is the way, like we have to.
Oh yeah, I can't do anything about it. Yeah.
My question here is where does karma play here? Because, for example, I have a body element. I can't stand for long. I can't walk for long distance.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
someone asks for a parikrama. I can't do anything about it.
Right. Okay. So it's relative to your okay. So according to your karma, you have some limitations. So within those limitations, you'll have to define self-care within those limitations. Right? So that's just your karma. Self-care means I accept it. I don't, I accept it and I deal with it as best I can. I mean, we all have some limitation, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual. And so self-care is accepting the reality of who I am, and then dealing the best I can within that reality. Yes? So each of us have different realities. We all wish we were more like so-and-so, isn't it? You must all have a so-and-so you wish you were more like, don't you? And so sometimes when you see so-and-so, it can make you feel bad because you're not like so-and-so and you wish you were, and it makes you see how much you're not like so-and-so, and you can feel really bad. Self-caring is accepting, I am inspired by so-and-so, but I have to accept this is who I am. And I can't change that. And still I can be Krishna conscious in my own way. I have my own qualities and qualifications. Maybe not as great as his, or maybe they're different, but I'm grateful to Krishna for giving me whatever he's given me, Maybe I can't go on parikrama, but I can sit here and chant. So, okay, I'll be grateful for that. Like 20, 30 years ago, I made a decision of what my service would be. And that means like 25 years before that, I became a devotee. So for 25 years as a devotee, I was doing something that I thought I should do that others did better than I did. I mean, I was okay, but not outstanding. And it was management, running temples, being in charge of things. And other people were doing better in many ways, could do better than I could. And At one point I thought, well, what do you do? What do you do the best? There's so many things you could do. What do you do the best? And I thought, but what I like to do, and I think I do the best of all the, best doesn't mean I'm the best in this temple or in ISKCON. It just means what I personally do best. It's not competitive with anybody else. I said, I think the best thing I do is create courses and teach. So that's what I'm going to do. And there's so many other things I could do, but right now, all I do is create courses, teach, and write books, and put the courses online. That's what I'm focused on, most of my energy, and do retreats and workshops. And that's what I do best. And I don't have to think, oh, maybe I should, start a big project somewhere. I don't have to. It's not necessary. So I just accept this is what I do well, and so let's do that. And I don't lament that I can't do other things. That's self-acceptance. And however well I do this or not so well, I accept that. Maybe if I were so-and-so, I'd be more successful. Yeah, probably. But I'll do the best I can and just accept that's, how it is. This is so funny. I was looking at my YouTube and, Instagram, and I'll look at something and I'll say, that was such a good talk I gave. How come there's no hits on it? That was like 300 hits. I go, that's like at least 100 million hit talk, And so sometimes I would lament, and why so-and-so has so many more hits? And one day, this is so funny, I was lamenting like this, I got to get more hits. I'm better than, 1,000 or 500. On Instagram, you get more. And then I'm giving class, and the devotee said, they said, oh, we put this one little video up on Instagram. And it was just a little thing I made. I was walking in a park, and I stopped, and I said something. They go, oh, you got 300,000 hits for that, right? So it's like, okay, you just, who knows, Who knows when you're going to be a rock star or be nobody, but you just do your best, and whatever happens, that's all you can do, right? Isn't it? I'm giving classes and I'm thinking, yeah, this is a good class, I should get lots of hits. And then Ravi Shankar's giving his talk and he's talking like that. We should, I'm like, why is he popular? It doesn't make sense, right? It's some karmic thing, right? Do you ever think like that? Like, it doesn't seem like a kind of a person who would be that popular because he's not like overly charismatic. But then you see somebody else. I have godbrothers. They're amazing, like just so good, and you go to their YouTube and 300 hits, 48 years ago. It's like, why? It's just not. They're not meant. They don't care. They're whatever. But they're brilliant, and they just those 300 people really who watched it got a lot. So okay, that's you don't have to, and they don't care. They're not worried about it. So we all have the same problem. It's just different, Don't you all have the same problem? Limitations? Yeah, I wish I were like someone else. I wish I had what someone else had. Wish I could speak like him, sing like him, manage like him, do business like him, dress the deities like, It's endless. If you want to be envious of other people, there's 6 billion out there to be envious of. So, it's not going to end anywhere. Unless you just accept, this is who I am, this is what Krishna gave me, and be satisfied with it. And you get better at it. You just do it and you get better. Keep doing it, get better at it. I don't know how else to deal with that. Envy, Because you could be thinking, oh, I can't go on program, everyone's so fortunate, and just lamenting, and, or I'm so bad, what sinful activity did I do? But that doesn't help you. It's just like, you're right here. What can I do right here? What's in front of me? Well, how can I use that, right? I was temple president, very young devotee, and whatever we do, Prabhupada would just encourage us. Thank you for doing that. I'm so encouraged. Like, what do we do? Like, went on Harinam, distributed 10 magazines. I'm very pleased and keep going. He never made us feel like there was anything wrong with us. But we make ourselves feel like there's something wrong. Yes? You ever feel like there's something wrong with you? Yeah. He never, sometimes when I was a young devotee, and I would feel guilty that I wasn't doing enough. And I would think, it's like, why am I feeling guilty? Because Prabhupada never said anything that would make me feel guilty. So it was completely coming from me. It wasn't coming from him. And I'd always think, this doesn't make any sense. I should have done more books, or I could have done better. Of course, that's true. And I was feeling guilty. And I'd always thought, but there's nothing Prabhupada ever said or did that would have ever in any way made me feel guilty. It was always encouraging. It was coming from me. So probably something from my upbringing or past life, or who knows. Right? Is that okay? Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Guruji, likewise, in some lectures we hear disqualification is our only qualification, or we have opened a crying school. So, we may self-hatred and this thing, then a bhav and bhakti. It looks almost similar only. At the neophyte stage, how one can discriminate between these two things, and this self.
What's real and what's false? Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, we have this principle in which you follow what the previous acharyas or seniors, their examples they've set, you follow that. But while you're following it, you have to follow it according to your level of realization and your level of advancement, right? So once you follow it and you're thinking or acting in a way that you deceive yourself to think you're more advanced than you are, and you're actually doing it. Like if I go up to you and say, Prabhuji, I just want you to know I'm lower than a worm stool. And you actually think you have that realization. You're deceiving yourself. You have no idea what that even means, right? So before you try to follow in the footsteps, you have to understand what they mean, right? So what does it mean, lower in the worm and stool? It means that you see everyone better than you. So, how many people in this room do you see better than you? I want you to include the mosquitoes, the ants, and every bug in this room, right? And even amongst the humans, you may feel like, well, I'm in the top 10 percentile in this room. Isn't it? Yeah. And especially if you go out on the street, definitely I'm in the top 0.00001 because I'm a devotee and they're not. Right? So to say I'm lower than a worm and stool means I think every living entity is higher than me. I'm even lower than a worm. So you go up, Prabhuji, I'm lower than a worm and stool. No, you're not. You don't believe that. You don't even know what you're talking about, right? So that would be an example of you're a new devotee. You can't possibly feel lower than a worm and stool. It's not possible. That is a byproduct of prema. So you can say, Krishnadas Kaviraj inspires me by his statement that he feels lower in the worm and stool. And I understand that means he feels lower than all living entities. And that is an exhibition of the ecstasy of prema, which is inconceivable to me now. And I just realize how proud I am that I think I'm better than so many people. And he thinks he's, that would be real according to your status. So if you take it that way, that's perfect. But if you take it some other way. Now, the problem is sometimes young devotees don't even know where they're at. They have no idea. But you can just assume you're not that far along yet, right? And you try to understand the principle. Okay, here's the example of Acharya. Well, so what's the principle? What am I supposed to understand? Like, Prahlad Maharaj forgives his father, you're going to forgive somebody who tries to kill you in 100 million ways? And he's your father? I mean, so many of us have issues with our fathers or mothers because they said one unkind word to us when we were 17, and that's it for the rest of their life. I'm never talking to him again, you know. It's like, how are we going to understand Prahlad Maharaj? His father tries to kill him. It's like, yeah, no problem. Let's ask Krishna to liberate him. So, how do you understand that from your perspective? And you start reflecting. Oh, I can hardly forgive the Prabhu who stole my sweet ball off my plate yesterday, you know. And you start reflecting, oh, I've got a long way to go, right? You know, that's how you do it. So you have to bring everything down to your reality and not think their reality is your reality, because it's not. Their reality is a principle, it's a goal, it's an idea. Okay. So Prahlad Maharaj is forgiving his father. Maybe I can forgive that Prabhu for that serious crime of stealing my sweet bowl. And you have to be a bit honest. And I think a lot of times the false ego doesn't allow us to be honest because we want to think we're greater than we are, and we can't see where we're at. So we want to deceive ourselves, make us feel good. Oh yeah, I got the realization, I understand that I'm humble. The first realization of humility is that I don't have any. Right? So if you think you're humble and you ask me, Prabhu, I think I'm humble. Am I humble? I said, definitely not. Because if you were, you wouldn't think like that. You would definitely think you're not. Right? Is that okay for now? All right. Anything else? We have 6 minutes. And then you get to take prasadam. Is anybody hungry? Only the brahmacharis? You had breakfast at 9:30. It's kind of early for lunch, right? You want to cancel lunch? The problem is I can't cancel because I had breakfast at 7:30 and I'm on an Ayurvedic discipline now to live forever. And so if I want to live forever, I have to have lunch at 1 o'clock latest. So, of course, you know, Kali is going to get so bad that I'll regret that I followed this diet when everything, and I'm like 800 years old and the whole world is horrible, you know. I'm like, why did I follow this diet? I should have died before and gone back to Godhead. But yeah, somebody else has? Yes. Oh, yes, yeah. Louder, louder, louder.
So in these sessions and PPTs, so we are really using word self. Most of the PPTs and talks.
Yeah.
So here is not we are becoming eye conscious when Krishna conscious.
This question is because we're talking about self-care. Are we becoming I conscious more than Krishna conscious? You're part and parcel of Krishna. You can't separate yourself from Krishna. You are a little Krishna. So yeah, I am servant of Krishna. That's fine. You should be I conscious, right? I'm spirit soul servant of Krishna. That's good. I conscious. No, I consciousness is not wrong at all. That I am, but the point of the I consciousness is that I am in charge of my life, right? I can't, you know, I can have every guru in ISKCON come here and give classes and seminars, but I'm the only one that can take advantage of it. So, and if I don't care enough about myself, I won't take advantage of it. And then I will be the cause of me taking rebirth. So we definitely need I consciousness, because I is the friend or the enemy, and we're trying through a self-care course to make you the friend, make the I the friendly I rather than the unfriendly I. So I is very important because everything is based on I, because you're driving the vehicle of I, and you know, you can drive it up or down. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and 18 seconds left. You have a question? Yeah. Okay, last question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Thank you for this wonderful seminar. So, from the point that you were telling that we have to internalize the self-consciousness, I
Yes.
And that is easier to
Yes.
convince an intelligence that
Yes.
yes, it is important for me. But the second part is the ego, where we think that I am lazy and I do not care. So that comes to the ego level actually. And even though the intelligence knows that self-care is important for me, finally it comes down to the determination and the ego that yes, it is important for me, but I do not care.
Yeah.
So how do we
There's a psychological reason for that, and then after lunch you'll find out. You'll find out after lunch. It's actually the second half is. If you like the first half, the second half is better. So make sure you're. I don't know what time we're going to start because I'm. Where am I going to take prasadam? Here? I have to go somewhere, and they have to be ready on time, and then we'll take prasadam and come back. So maybe Sureshwar, we'll be back by 2. Okay, so we'll start at 2, and then I'll just say a little something to this, because a lot of the work that I did in preparing this course was based on questions I was asking, which is basically your question, like why would, it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't anybody care about themselves, right? Well, we care about our sense gratification. That's for sure. Right? But even that caring about our sense gratification can be antithetical to caring because it can be harmful. And so one of the things that I discovered is it could be brought in from the last life, just a samskar of, whatever. You just, at some point in your journey, you just started turning against yourself. For maybe you did something horrible and you just always felt bad. It could be any event in your life that made you feel. It could be somebody telling you you're bad. It could be a perception because you didn't get good grades, or the grades you wanted, that something's wrong with you, or you failed in some way, there's something wrong with you. So one of the problems that children face, and big children, adult children face, because they faced it as children, is identifying failure with yourself. So I'm a failure as opposed to I failed doing this. And there's the distinction. So a lot of us will see failure as that it's personal. Like you say, the ego. The ego gets hurt and think, I'm a failure. You're not a failure, you just failed in this one particular task. It has nothing to do with you as a success or failure. And so that could be programmed in there. And so many things could be programmed in there. Then we have another thing, which is we're going to do later, which is so beautiful. A lot of us have this program, and this is so interesting. We're aware of our faults, all of us. We know what's wrong with us, right, better than anybody. So we think, knowing what's wrong with us, we don't like ourselves. We don't like all those faults. So we think, how is it possible Krishna could like us? Because I don't even like myself. So why would he like us, right? So then we get into this problem of Krishna doesn't love me. And that feeds into why I shouldn't care about myself, because I think he doesn't care. Because why would he care? I mean, he doesn't need me. He's fine without me. And I turn my back on him, and I've done so many bad things. And so later today, we're going to go through that to show you that Krishna loves you. And he doesn't love you because of what you've done. He loves you because of who he is. So you can be whatever, and you can be aware of all your faults, and you can even think, I don't love myself, I don't like myself with my faults, but Krishna, he's not like you, so he's not going to see you that way. And so we make this mistake. Everyone listen carefully, because this is really important. We make a mistake of judging that Krishna is like ourself, that I don't like myself because of my faults, so he wouldn't like me because of my faults. Yes? That's a huge mistake, right? So part of self-care is that Krishna cares. If Krishna cares about me and wants me to go back to Godhead, shouldn't I care? Yeah, the answer, of course, is yes. This person is calling you back to Godhead. He came down here, he spoke Bhagavad Gita, then he came as Mahaprabhu. He's calling you back to Godhead. And you don't care about yourself, and he does? You know, if you ever become a parent, one of the most difficult, frustrating, and difficult situations to deal with is when you're helping your kid and they don't care. You say, don't eat that, I don't care. study that. I don't care. Right? You care, but they don't. Okay. Krishna cares, but you don't. He's frustrated with you. Think about it. So we're going to talk more about that. You know, if you grew up and you interpreted situations in your life as there's something wrong with you, or you lack in some way, then if you have all these negative identities, it's like, why would you care then? You know, or worse, you know, sometimes I would think like this. I don't know where this came from, but I feel like, you know, I become a devotee, but sometimes, like, I just blew it. You know, I did something I shouldn't have done, or at least didn't do it properly. And I think, Krishna probably, you know, is going to punish me for that. I'll get some karma. You know, I was thinking like, but that's not what he's thinking. I'm thinking, oh, I deserve to suffer for this. You know, I glanced lustfully at a woman. Krishna's probably going to make a truck run me over today. You know, that ought to teach me. You know, never to do that again, right? But that's not the way he thinks. So I'm thinking, why am I thinking that way? Like, why am I feeling like so shameful that I think I deserve to suffer? So that's all programmed in there. And then we think, oh, Krishna's going to make me suffer because I think I deserve it. And so these are the kind of things we need to be thinking about and discussing and working through and realizing this is all just, when Krishna says the mind's the enemy, this is like really getting into the depths of how it's the enemy. Because before I taught this course, you know, I thought I understood how the mind was the enemy. But after I taught this course, I realized I had no idea the depth and width of how the mind's the enemy. Because this, when you look at self-care and all these different levels of it, you see, oh, there's so many ways we're not a friend to ourselves. There's so many ways we're harming ourselves. So that's just a preview. Okay, so I promise this afternoon is going to be amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing you around 2 o'clock. Okay? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Should I leave this computer here?